I think that we need to heavily invest in human capital development. A country is only as good as its teachers, as the quality of its teachers.
Do you aspire for a booming middle-class economy? Listen along and understand what turns the wheels of Uganda's economy with our line of incredible influencers in their fields.
If you hear me say patriots, those are the listeners. They are curious and passionate about making change in Uganda, and so are you. We are hosting Benjamin Rukwenje today. You are so dedicated. You have been empowering the next generation of leaders in this country, and this is so commendable, Benjamin. And your expertise and leadership in the field of youth development and entrepreneurship, all of these have been so valuable, especially with Boundless Minds. We are just excited to have you here and have you share your insights with the young people. Welcome to the podcast, Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it is exciting. Every time I get onto a founder, a leader like yourself, I always wonder if any of your personal journeys have really inspired what you're doing today.
When I think about it critically, I'd say yes. So I know every time I listen to founders tell their story, I see that like the personal connection to the mission and their life. And I don't know if I have it in that way, but I know that for sure the reason why I do mentorship is because I have had the benefit of being mentored either throughout my life, throughout my career, that I've had people looking out for me, encouraging me, showing me where to go, directing my path and steps. Because of how much I appreciate that, I feel compelled to do the same for others. So now I like to say that I spend a lot of my time now talking to younger founders and sharing with them, because you receive all of these messages and texts. Oh, I have this idea that I want to share with you. Can we meet? And I spend a lot of time doing that because I know that I was those guys 10 years ago looking for someone, an older head that knew their way around, that I could run my ideas by for validation and stuff.
Yeah, sorry, Benjamin, for clarity, what was the pivotal moment that helped you shape Boundless Mind? So when did you actually think of this idea?
It was a little after I had completed university, and I was having a conversation with an American friend who was volunteering in Uganda. So first of all, let's start with when we started, I didn't know that what I wanted to do was mentorship or work readiness. It was just like this thing that you want to do that has no label, right? So we were having this conversation with her, and she'd been in maybe 4 countries at the time. Uganda was the 4th country. And so at the time, she was volunteering at an orphanage in Rakai. And I was very fascinated by it because I thought, okay, how did your American parents let you fly to Africa where they have never been? And how did you even find this orphanage
Rakai, of all
in
places.
Rakai? Like how? So that fascinated me. And the more we had these conversations, the more I realized that even while we were around the same age, her confidence and world exposure and world knowledge and competences far outstripped mine because of how early she had started. So she had all of this world exposure. She knew different cultures, different foods, different experiences. If she wrote her CV or if she talked about herself, we wouldn't compare, right? And yet both of us were in university at the time. And I mean, she was at Yale, which is Ivy League. You get my point, right? So the more we talked, the more I thought, okay, if you started around 17, 18, what would be the equivalent for a Ugandan student, right? A Ugandan at that point is probably in their senior 6 vac or thereabouts. So what do they do? And so I started to think to myself, I hadn't done anything in my senior 6 vacation. I just stayed home. But then I also knew that if I had gone to my parents and said, I want to go and volunteer at an orphanage in Rakai or Gulu or wherever, they would have said flat no. They wouldn't have allowed it. And I know that many of my friends would have been in the same situation. And yet you see, their Western age mates come here, spend 3 months, 6 months volunteering and learning about all of these things that they need to learn. So by the time you finish school, these guys have like a 5-year head start on you, which is hard to make up. So that for me, having those conversations and having that realization was the pivotal moment, because then I said, what would a Ugandan equivalent of getting young people exposed to volunteer work and learning and all of those processes look like? The more ideas I got, the more I looked online, the more I had conversations with people and told them, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. They said, no, approach it this way, approach it this way. And that birthed Boundless. It came from just wondering what it would look like if we had young Ugandans exposed to work and life situations outside of their schools and homes.
That is brilliant. Now that I think of it, I actually went through the same awakening. I was in the US, I think at 25 years old. And my sister's colleagues who are the same age were managing over 200 employees. And I'm thinking, wait, what? I need to do something about my life. And I remember being so curious at that point and thinking, oh, no, 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 no. I am sleeping on whatever I'm doing. That's nice that you also got that and learned from it and actually took chance or actioned upon it and rethought how you do
it. So this conversation is happening around 2012, 2013. So in 2015, I register this organization called Boundless Minds, but then I don't do anything for another 2 years until 2017. Because of course, sometimes you're scared, you don't know what to do, how to do it. The idea is in the head. When it comes to the practical application, you don't know where to start. You also have, I don't know whether that's the thing they call imposter syndrome. You're like, but will people buy in? Like, will they think, who am I? And that kind of stuff.
I've found Boundless Minds to have a lot of significant impact on young people. Now, I'd love to hear some success stories. What stories have stood out within Boundless Minds?
One of the things that always stands out for me is a conversation I had with them. There was a girl 4 years ago in one of our mentorship cohorts. The cohort lasts 10 weeks on average. And of those 10 weeks, they have to go in their school within their neighborhood and volunteer. We figured because of that cultural difference that parents would never allow their kids here to go away from home and to travel to another district or whatever and volunteer. So how we dealt with that is that people volunteer in their communities so that I can just work from home, go to a school in my neighborhood and volunteer and come back home. So parents are not worried about where their children are because they are in a school in the neighborhood. So one girl once told me, she said, look, before I joined the program, I used to have fights with my parents because they thought I wasn't doing anything. I'd just stay at home and they watch TV. And every single day they would come back and ask, what did you do today? I genuinely didn't have an answer. So they would quarrel. You know how African parents are. If you're just sitting there, they hate that you're chilling.
For no good reason,
Yeah, like why are you doing nothing? So she said, first of all, in the evening when we are all back at home, because I have gone out and volunteered, I have constructive conversation to contribute at home. So when everyone is talking about their day, I have stories to tell about my day, about the children, about my work, about the teachers, about this thing that I was teaching, about my experience. So it's given me purpose. And I can see that my parents look at me differently.
Yeah.
They think I am serious and important. And even when my friends say they want to see me and I tell them I'm busy, it's not a lie. Like I'm not forging it, which for me is a very fulfilling thing because that's not something we wanted to create. The other is the friendships that come out of people being in the same cohort. There are people who have become friends, support each other, grow together, and they've built like these really important bonds because they were in the same cohort. Now they've gone into university or vocational school. You will find one other alumni, they're able to help you. So for me, that's the other thing. But of course, there are also things that we measure. For example, how many people have we transitioned into work as a result of that? So we have a 67% transition rate into entry-level opportunities, which I am happy with, but I think it can get better. But I know that that's good. We have young people who have gone through our program and they are now employers before they are even. So you were talking about how people were supervising 200 people. We don't have that, but we have at least young people who are running their own enterprises and they employ others, which for me makes me happy because it was the motivation for starting. That if these guys are 23, 24, right? And they are already running their own enterprises and employing others. Let's say those enterprises somehow fall on hard times in 4 years or 3 years or 5 years and don't work.
Yeah.
These guys will have still learned so many lessons from starting early that I am sure they will succeed. The motivation is that if people start early, start thinking about work early, start learning about money and finances early, start building relationships. So if they learn about success and failure, and while they are still in 20, 21, 22, then those lessons they can carry. So I see a lot of that, of course, in terms of how we're growing, but also my team is mostly our alumni.
Yeah.
So my team is mostly
Also love to give back.
Yes. So my team is mostly our alumni.
Yeah.
So every time I receive compliments about our work, it makes me so happy because I know that the guys who do the actual work, that while I might take credit for it, that there are people who do the actual work, which gives validation.
Right.
Basically, if I was running a restaurant from which I couldn't consume the food, you'd question that food, right?
Yeah. That they
Yeah.
take so much value out of it and they feel the need to also share it with the same
Yes.
people that would come through the doors they
Yes.
walk.
Yes.
That's amazing. It feels exactly like what you set out to do. And now your
Yes.
followers are doing the same for
Yeah.
others. So that's
Maybe just to add, we have incredible goodwill. I don't even know how to explain it. When I started, I had all manner of people reach out and say, look, we think that this thing is important, so let's help you build it.
Yeah.
So I might be the face of it,
yeah.
but Boundless has benefited from countless people who say, have you seen this approach? Maybe you should try it. From people who we go to and say, this is what we are trying to do.
Wait a minute. Do you know what it will take for Uganda to achieve a middle-class economy by 2040? Please send us an email at onuganda@gmail.com.
It's not working. What do you think? I think when you do mentorship work, there are a lot of people who recognize its importance or wish they had gotten it. And because they didn't, now they want to give back. In 22, we started this mentor matching program. So which basically pairs professionals who are between 30 to 45 with a young person. So professional commits I will do. In that period, we've enrolled over 200 mentors, like who volunteer their time. Sometimes we don't even have, sometimes we don't even have mentees. Like we just have a waiting list of mentors.
Wow.
Which for me is incredible.
That is proof of the idea and proves that it is needed here in Uganda, and that's exciting. So now from your experience, based on the lessons that have been shared by these mentors, what are the key skills young people need to thrive in today's job marketplace?
What I hear from employers, but also what I see from the research that I consume and the research that informs our work, is that you can train for the technical skill, right? But the soft skill, there's a gap. There's actually a huge gap there.
Yeah.
The gap between school and work is really, really wide. So many young people leave school, whether as graduates or as dropout, because we have such a high school dropout rate in Uganda.
How high is it?
At primary level, it's 68%. Only 32% of our primary school kids complete P7. I think it is about 43 or so at O level. Just to give you the numbers, if you put 1.8 million children in P1 today,
Yeah.
7 years later, only 800,000 will sit P7. 1 million would have dropped out. Soft skills is one of the problems. Young people can't write an email. They don't know how to communicate to clients. They've never worked anywhere. They can't write a report. They can't text properly. Their attitude to work is not the right one. They don't have emotional resilience. They have not been trained to deal with colleagues and at work. The requirements like creativity and problem solving don't exist. So without giving them instructions, they can't act on their own. So all of those things are lacking. So that we try to solve for those.
Yeah.
Our training is heavy on self-paced learning because the traditional education has a teacher giving you all of the things that you need and then asking you questions at the end of the term or the year to see if you will pass, which is not what happens when you go to work. When you go to work, you're supposed to perform. They will give you instructions once and that's it. Our training model is around self-paced learning so that you learn how to manage yourself, your time, your results, your abilities. When I say that this guy is going to schools to volunteer, you have to go and find that volunteer opportunity on your own. We don't help you. You have to write reports as part of that, weekly reports you have to. So all of those things are meant to introduce aspects of work and undo the things that they're learning. So that's one of the things that we found, that the soft skills part is really, really lacking. Of course, there's the technical skill itself, but that's not a problem. You can train for that. It's really the soft skills. Soft skills and attitude.
That's not your role. There's technical skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I think the other thing that we found is also the lack of opportunity. There aren't enough good quality jobs to go around. So even while you train people, they'll still get jobs which pay less than $100 a month and things like that. So one person has to do 3-4 jobs, half of which might not pay. The labor market is a problem for the young people that are coming into the world of work. There's
also the same problem in other countries. Some people have to take 3 jobs, 2 jobs just to meet their needs.
Yeah. The problem that I see mostly is around the 4 things. There's a skills and knowledge gap, right? There's a resources gap because there are resources that you need for you to get into the world of work. For example, the digital economy is limitless. Young people can find remote work, can find opportunities. There are all of these global platforms that they can get onto. But they need to know how to be online, right? They need to know how to use computers, to use their phones, how to find work online. They need to be tech literate, basically.
Yeah.
But your average Ugandan student is actually tech illiterate. I don't have the numbers, and we'll do a survey on this, but I think that a significant number of our students will have access to their first mobile phone when first either mobile or smartphone when they are probably like 18 or at university and stuff. But also there are no computers, laptops are expensive, the internet is expensive, it's not in some places. So all of those things contribute to that skills gap, because even if they couldn't find work here, if they had the right skills and tools, there's work elsewhere that they can do remotely. But if they don't have the skill or competence and the infrastructure, that can be a problem, right?
No, what I hear you say is you're really providing work readiness skills.
Yes.
And I wonder if those are also intertwined with the entrepreneurial mindset, because we hear that Uganda is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. Are we only training these participants to work at people's places or create their own jobs?
So the way the program is designed is that it blends the two, right? Because we know the reality of Uganda is that you will likely end up being an entrepreneur even if you don't want to, because the jobs are scarce, they don't pay well, or maybe you need money to survive and then start your enterprise, right? So you need a job to find capital for your passion.
Yeah.
So we blend the two. It's a very blended model in terms of the outcomes. The other thing that I have been conscious to say, and I say this as an entrepreneur and a founder, that's actually not even me who said this. I think I saw it somewhere. I just agree with it. That African founders or entrepreneurs are overtrained and undercapitalized,
Yeah.
right?
I see what you
So
mean.
there's that to think about, right? There are people whose socio-economic situation is such that it doesn't matter what kind of entrepreneurship training you give them. If you don't give them $100, they cannot start anything. They don't have the means. You know, Uganda, people like that are so many, and they are the ones who come to us. So sometimes I just feel a certain way to say, oh, we're training entrepreneurs, because I know that these guys, if you train them without giving them anything to start,
Yeah.
like, you're wasting your training resources on them, because you'll teach them bookkeeping, you'll teach them how to market their things, you'll teach them all of this stuff. But sometimes all they need is $50 to start a Rolex Mudala, which they don't have. Do you get?
Yeah.
That for me usually is the contradiction. And then I also have always argued that, look, and I know this firsthand, that every entrepreneur, your vision is as good as the team you have to execute it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why we emphasize, if there are entrepreneurs out there, we will give you the best talent. So we will focus on training the talent for you to at least guarantee that your vision can work. That sometimes is the balance. So that's why when you hear me talk about the fact that we are transitioning this number of people into jobs and stuff, it sort of comes to that. The understanding that entrepreneurs need, can we give them good teams?
Yeah, but also capital. The numbers you shared earlier were interesting. 67% of your Boundless Minds
Yeah.
funds are transitioned into the job marketplace. With this statistic, I wonder, how do you see the future of work evolving? You've been at it for so long, 2017 till today.
I think that employers will have to change their attitude towards things about people complaining about, oh, millennials, oh, Gen Z.
Yeah.
But you see, that's the labor force.
Mm.
That's who is coming to work.
Especially in Uganda, where
Yes.
what 70% of our
Yeah, they are below 30.
under 30. Yeah.
That's who is coming to work.
That's true.
Are you ready to deal with them in the way that they will arrive? Right? That's who you're recruiting today. That's who you're going to recruit. They want to be at a branch on Sunday night, go home at 3, but you expect a report on Monday morning. Like, that's who they are. They want to do their job, but they also want to pursue their passion, right? Sometimes they don't want to show up at work because they just don't feel like it. That's who they are, right? So how is the workplace going to respond? I think that's one of the issues that people are going to have to deal with,
But we
right?
also don't have to stoop so low. Like, we don't have to
I agree. I agree.
to accommodate Gen Z's incompetence. If
No.
that
So yes. So the workplaces don't have to stoop so low. I think that it just needs to be at the back of their minds. And the example I like to use is, I live in Makindye division, right? Which now incorporates Gama Road, Munyonyo, Buziga, Bunga. In the last 1-2 years, or maybe 3 years, there's been an influx of immigrants from Ethiopia and Eritrea, right? So that they are basically taking over the place, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you are trying to do a business in this area, just thinking about the future of that business in the next 3, 4, 5 years, that population trend should tell you what kind of business you should do. And if that business targets Ugandans, you will likely not have clients, because it's clear from the trend that the Ugandan population will be fewer and the immigrant population will grow. So if you're doing a business target, have that at the back of your mind, right?
Yes.
And I feel that this conversation about Gen Zs and millennials sort of fits into that, because if you're running a business, you've got to understand that the talent available is this. So how do I get the best for my business as an employer from the talent available to me? Otherwise, there's always going to be these clashes. And you don't want to spend so much time as a business person solving internal problems with your staff because you've refused to understand what's going on. Of course, the other thing that I see in terms of trends is tech. So you have all of these conversations around AI and it's whatever. I think that Uganda, it will take a while for us to get to where countries in the West are, but the influence of technology cannot be under scored, or I don't know if that's the word, but so in terms of how it's impacting work, right? So that's why if I was thinking policy, I would be investing in digital literacy as a key policy or investment area, because you can solve a lot of problems by just doing that. And of course, the nature of work has changed, so people are doing remote jobs, so they have to respond to that. People have 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs at the same time. You were saying how it's a thing in Europe, right? That people take 2, 3 jobs.
In America, I haven't seen that a lot here in Europe, but in America, that people take more than 2 jobs just to make ends.
Yeah, but you know that our parents weren't like that. They did one job, like they just did one
Yes.
every day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you think about it from that aspect, you realize that has changed. So the era of people working one job at a time is also gone, right? And yet sometimes you feel that the way many people still approach life, it's like we still live in that era. So I find that's also something to consider when thinking about the future of work and how things are going to happen. When you're designing learning programs, training programs, growth programs for young people, when you're thinking about human resource support or human capital development for that matter, I think that those are things to really consider.
I definitely hope that the policymaker listening in today takes note of that. Thank you.
I hope so.
You've been very big on digital literacy. If you check
Yes.
his pages, LinkedIn, Twitter, he's very vocal and advocate of digital literacy. So thank you so much for that, Benjamin. Now, for the dear patriot who is listening in today, Benjamin, what is your advice when they're beginning their career? Also for those who are starting ventures.
I don't even know how to put it. So I find that many times we overthink things because of fear. And I had the same thing when I wanted to start Boundless. It takes you 2 years to just come around to making that decision.
Yeah.
But if you don't put yourself out there, that dream you have, that idea you have just might never work, right? Or you might never know if it was the wrong one or the right one. The only way to test it is to give yourself a chance. If you see a job advert that you feel you can do, and if the qualifications say they need this and you don't have it, but you feel confident that you can do that
master's
job,
degree. Yeah.
apply for the job and let it be on them to say no. Like, you're not the one recruiting yourself. Let the recruiter say, no, here, you overshot your
No, to be honest, there are people, especially HR managers, who are so frustrated when someone applies for a job that above their qualifications, and they're like, but how could they? And I'm thinking they wanted to shoot their shot.
Yeah.
People get really frustrated with CVs that are not correspondent to the qualifications sought for.
So I usually apply for grants because of my work and fellowships and all. And one of the things that my friend and I like to say is that, look, it could be that sometimes everyone thought this thing is above them.
Yeah.
And you're the only one who applied.
Yeah.
So you get the opportunity just because. I think it's the same with entrepreneurs and founders. that if you have an idea, just try, start. If it doesn't work, then you know that it wasn't a good idea or the market wasn't ready. Then you have confirmation, but you'll never have confirmation if all you do is stay with it in your mind. If it works, great. If it doesn't, there's nothing to lose, or there's nothing to be ashamed of for having tried and failed at something. I want to encourage people to approach their lives because you just never know where this thing could go. And maybe just lastly on this, I say this because so this week I asked a question on Twitter, founders, especially of non-profit companies and social enterprises, like how long did it take you to crystallize on a revenue model? How long did it take you? But also, how many iterations did you have to go through to finally nail it? And the reason I asked that is because we keep going through these iterations. You think you've got it, then 6 months down the road, you realize maybe not. Let's try it this way, or let's try this other one instead.
Yeah.
And that's both the frustration, but it's also the beauty of doing this kind of work or of being a founder, because you're constantly trying to improve yourself, trying to improve the organization. And because then it makes you an expert on what doesn't work on the field. Then I can tell you, look, this thing cannot work. I have evidence. We've tried it.
My experience.
And
Yeah.
so don't even try it. But I know that this can work because we've also tried it and it has worked.
I wonder what new initiatives or projects you're working on that we should look out for.
So I like predictability as a person.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes my personality is transferred to Boundless. I think that in some instances, organizations need to be predictable. Like at least the processes need to be very predictable. You can innovate around stuff. There are things that we are talking about, for example, how to work with refugees and immigrants, because that's a new space that's opened up, right?
Yeah.
And get them ready for work, because there's many.
Quite a number.
There's many. First of all, Uganda is one of the leading hosts for both urban and the ones in camps. So how do we support those that need the kinds of skills and support that we offer to integrate and find work here? To just give you an example, in West Nile, in the West Nile region, there are 2 districts whose refugee population is bigger than the local population. And I've been talking a lot about digital literacy and skilling. That's also another area that I intend on driving us towards. So as a team, we're having conversations around how do we remodel our training to deliver, because digital jobs are probably easier to find, and there are a lot more opportunities that people can do if they have that literacy, understanding, and they are savvy. We are now actively looking for partners and money and resources that will drive us towards more digital skilling, which we are not doing, yet we know can be a game changer for the young people that come to us. So I think those are the 2 things we are actively working on.
And good luck with that. Go on and on about this today. I really want to know, looking back from the 10 years, right? We'll count the 2 when you're not active as well.
Yes.
What are you most proud of?
I think that the fact that we're still here and it doesn't look like we're going away is something that I am proud of, that it's paid off. That gamble that started with me wondering what it would look like if A/B happened, I'm seeing the answer to that question in real time and real terms, that when you do this with young people, this is what can actually happen. I dared to dream. People came along and dreamt with me, and we are seeing the results of the things that we imagined could happen if we did ABC. But also at a personal level as well, it's that there was a time when my work and life and identity was knit with Boundless. I am starting to find my identity. Boundless is starting to find its identity outside of me and live through the people that have come through the program. So I will say something that many founders don't say, or that I wouldn't have said 3 years or so ago, is that now, like I sit here, and when people ask me, oh, if you aren't around, what would happen to Boundless? Boundless would leave. I'm not scared of having conversations about if Boundless closed, because like, what's Boundless? It's the people that have come through it and they exist. This is just a vehicle. If that vehicle stopped working, you'd start another. But the journey, the people in it and stuff still exist. So to be in that place where my life, my identity, my everything is not intertwined with the work is something that I am happy about.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much for making time. We have the very last question that we ask every guest that comes onto this podcast. Are you ready?
Am I going to like this question?
So it is the question about achieving a middle class economy. The World Bank projected that Uganda is going to achieve a middle class economy by 2040. And we bring on leaders like yourself to tell us from your perspective, what is it going to take for Uganda to achieve that middle class economy?
I think that we need to heavily invest in human capital development. You know, a country is only as good as its teachers, as the quality of its teachers.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
it's people.
well, its
people.
people are a product of its teachers, right?
That's true.
It's hard for you to exceed the quality of your teachers. By teachers, I mean the ones in formal school, but also our mentors. Boundless is only as good as the mentors that we have, because we're a mentorship organization. The vision is only as good as the team. That aspect of human capital development, we need people who have the ability to dream, but also bring those dreams to life. So if we don't invest in human capital development, if we don't invest in the quality of our education, in how it's designed, in the things that people are learning and how they are learning them, then we cannot create the kind of economy that delivers that dream in the time that we have set for ourselves. I'd really speak to human capital development. I think we need to do a lot more work there. And my worry is that I don't feel that the movement there is as fast and urgent as it needs to be. Yeah.
I've heard that saying, especially you in digital literacy, regulation is not advancing as fast as innovation.
Yes.
But I've also heard from some of them that they need to first examine and understand how this innovation itself, because it's such a whirlwind of innovations, and some of these are quite new to Uganda that they don't seem to understand it. So before they can actually implement or regulate.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that many countries are going to have to deal with. But it's also a good problem. If people are innovating, that's a good problem to have. But you need infrastructure to support that. You need environment. So every time an innovator feels that they are not supported, or that the regulatory infrastructure that exists, in fact, hamstrings their progress, it just becomes hard for them to stay motivated and for them to stay in the game. And you see it a lot on the continent, that there's also the risk that people might go where they feel that systems, that for me is the worry with thinking about having a middle income Uganda, that if we are not very proactive around that regulatory environment and general business environment, because we are a very young country of very enterprising people, but those enterprises need fertile ground in which to sprout and thrive. So if we don't create that, there's a risk that people say, now innovate for what?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening in this far. I really hope that this conversation was helpful to you. Share this episode with your colleagues or friends that you think will benefit from this information. Let them know what you're listening to. Would you also rate our podcast? Because once you rate our podcast, other people like you are able to listen to this information and use it to their own benefit. On a lighter note, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Would really like to hear your thoughts.